So this is what we're all about today as part of the creative leadership. And here's Julia joining us as well. So welcome, Julia. We are hoping to share with you the Learning for Sustainability framework that we've been working on for a while, and we're presenting it to you today as an example of creative and collaborative leadership. So I'll move on to our, has it moved on to the next slide, Jane?
No, it's not yet.
No, it hasn't. Is that us now? Excellent. Okay, so I am Yvonne McBlain. I'm a Curriculum Support Officer with the Service and School Improvement Team in Falkirk Children's Services. And there's a whole host of stuff. Jane and I have worked together for quite a long time, so there's a whole host of other stuff we could tell you, but we said we would limit ourselves to that and sort of reveal more about this journey. So we are going to present our journey towards the creation of our Learning for Sustainability framework. So I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself, Jane.
Yeah, I do know quite a few people in the session today, so hello, nice to see some well-kent faces. I've got responsibility for outdoor learning and Learning for Sustainability within Falkirk. I've been involved in outdoor learning for over 30 years in a variety of different roles. And I think really at the heart of what I do, it's about kind of demonstrating to practitioners that outdoor learning is not something different, it's not something extra, it's not something bolt on, but that if we're actually about preparing young people to set out in life, that we actually need to be learning in and about the environment in which they exist, and gradually broadening those horizons, making connections between them and the world in which they live, and developing that sense of belonging and responsibility. And although I've been involved in outdoor learning for over 30 years, that is really what Learning for Sustainability is all about. And outdoor learning is one of the key pillars of LFS. So my outdoor learning work is really just continuing with a wee bit of a wider focus. So a wee bit of a background for me, and I'm going to hand back to Yvonne, and she's going to explain really what our LFS framework's all about.
Thanks, Jane. And to those of you who might have been in the national LFS event that we presented to a wee while back, you may recall, I don't actually think we got a chance to share this slide. I think we were very limited in the slides that we were able to share. So we've put this slide in today just as an indication of, well, partly where our journey started. So we both feel, and I'm sure, well, I'm guessing all of you have a similar opinion, that LFS is at the very heart of education and of curriculum for excellence. So we've used these extracts from the refreshed curriculum narrative to try to capture that. Obviously, the 4 capacities are all about the essence of LFS, because Learning for Sustainability is about creating citizens, people who can operate in our modern world. And the big red rectangle, the statements which are in there, kind of capture that in Curriculum for Excellence speak. So that central idea that the children and young people that we work with are burgeoning little citizens, as I've said, and that LFS is about helping them to realise their interdependence, their relationships with the world around them, with their families, with their communities. Also capturing all of the skills and attributes that are needed in this interconnected, the cliches, digital and rapidly changing world. And there's that democratic element of it and that activist role for everyone in our society just now. So we felt that these were just some of the elements of Curriculum for Excellence that made or linked with LFS and made it central to the curriculum. And we've put the link into the refreshed curriculum narrative there as well. And I suppose the centrality of Learning for Sustainability to both the 4 capacities and the vision and values that underpin Curriculum for Excellence carries over into the actual structure of the curriculum. And that's why we thought the diagram of the 4 contexts might be a useful visual to have in this slide. So that idea that although the Learning for Sustainability that we teach might in some cases look like a science lesson that fits within that context of curriculum areas or subjects, More often, it'll be interdisciplinary, so we'll probably be showing the overlap between sciences or social studies or RME, health and wellbeing, so there could be all sorts of really powerful interdisciplinary links. Likewise, there will be lots of opportunities for personal achievements such as Duke of Edinburgh Awards, John Muir Awards, other achievements that can be celebrated within the school, and that in turn overlaps with the ethos and life of the school as a community. So that idea that learning for sustainability is inherent and integral to Curriculum for Excellence and weaves its magic between all of the 4 contexts. And during our last minute preparations for this session this morning, Jane and I were also reflecting on the fact that in our journey and working with colleagues in our authority towards a framework which we hope enables them to be creative curriculum makers, so creative curriculum leaders, but also to enable the learners to creatively be part of the planning of the learning process. So we were reflecting that it's not only about Curriculum for Excellence, that learning for sustainability is actually inherent in our GIRFEC policy and our Developing the Young Workforce policy as well. So in our ongoing journey, we're going to have to adjust anything that we share with people so that it reflects those key policies as well. And I think this is where I hand over to you, Jane, to talk about the influence of the Wordle or the word cloud on our journey.
Yeah, hopefully you'll all be familiar with the LFS word cloud. And I guess this is where Yvonne and I really sort of started to get creative. So we see our role as being a wee bit of a buffer between policy and the staff on the ground, the folk that are actually delivering the learning to wee people. And learning for sustainability is a responsibility of all. It's embedded in our professional standards. But how could we get folk to take everything that this image contains and actually sort of make it into something deliverable and tangible for the folk on the ground? So, as I say, this was where our creative process started. And prior to the work that we've just undertaken, we used to take this word cloud out when we first started working with schools in LFS, and we basically just said, okay, let's take a highlighter and highlight the bits that you already think you're doing in the school. We might be able to identify gaps, and that might give you a focus for where you might be able to take your next bit of development. But we realised that we needed something that allowed people to tackle it in a much more kind of structured and organised way. So we had a very creative session, which basically involved us deconstructing that word cloud. We pulled it apart and we started to group things together. And there are things in there that are to do with skills, and there are words and statements in there that are to do with pedagogy and practice. And we kind of stripped those all out and we grouped them together. And then we looked at what was left. And we took what was left and we tried to bundle those together into what we're just calling learning bundles. And we're going to take you through what those bundles look like in a wee minute. And by grouping things together into tangible bits, and there are 5 kind of bundles or I guess learning contexts or ways that you could structure your learning, it then allowed people to, I guess, kind of visualize how they could actually take this and plan this in a really kind of constructive way and show progression and show depth and show relevance. So what we're going to do now is if you move on to the next slide, Yvonne, that kind of creative process evolved Yvonne and I's kind of creative skills. So we had the problem of how do we take that poster and make it tangible for people. We had to be really open-minded about what this was going to look like. And we certainly had to be pretty imaginative about what we were going to create. So on to what we've actually produced. So the next slide shows you the poster, and Yvonne's going to take you through a wee bit of our poster creation.
Thanks, Jane. Yes, so on the left of the screen there, you can see the representation of the poster. Obviously can't see any detail of it, but we can make that poster available to you after the session if that would be of interest. The framework, what exactly is it? It is about the poster. So the poster's the starting point, and we thought that was a kind of creative tool to use as a communication device. It describes the start of our LFS journey, and it captures our ideas for creating a framework which is flexible in itself. So it's a framework that gives, hopefully, just the right balance of structure that schools and other educational establishments can use. So that's the role of the poster. It starts to define what our framework actually is. But the framework is also about us trying to rationalise that word cloud, as Jane's just described there. And we've rationalised all of those words, all of that content from the word cloud, by first of all explaining how LFS is central to the curriculum in the top part of the poster, and then capturing the skills, as Jane described, and then using the rest of it. Once we picked out the pedagogy and the planning, we could see the rest of it was content that could be captured as 5 big, broad curriculum purposes, probably interdisciplinary purposes. So Jane will take you through those bundles, as we call them, in a wee while, and that's what the plans in number 2 refers to. So we've created starter plans for each of the bundles to help our schools and our education establishments build their own framework, basically. And the processes that we've gone through with, well, together and with practitioners and senior leaders in our schools and settings, we recognised that they were an essential part of that journey, and that those processes would keep on evolving, and that there would be overlap between each of these 5 Ps, as we're calling them here. So the processes are also about developing the professional learning offer that we have here in our authority, and sharing wider, as we're getting the opportunity to do today also. But in addition, Jane and I reckoned that we couldn't support this framework alone, that we had lots of brilliant partners, both national and beyond, who have not only resources, but also people who can work with their practitioners. They can guide them to other connections, whether it's about international education and beyond. So we felt that those 5 Ps altogether formed our framework. And we've created a SWAY that captures that journey in a bit more detail. So if anybody did want to have a look at that, the link will be available to you through the presentation as well. So, tour of the poster. This was my bit, Jane. We're still on track?
Yep, so you've got the first 2 and then I've got the bundles.
Excellent, thank you. So, as I said to you, the first section of the poster, so our blue arrow at the top, just captures some of the bits that I explained to you at the very start of our session today. So this is the part where basically we explain to colleagues across Falkirk and beyond that we've taken the word cloud to bits, that we're trying to capture all of the entitlements of learning for sustainability, and we're trying to do it through a framework that streamlines the curriculum and that shows and demonstrates how learning for sustainability as a cross-cutting theme can be integrated with the 4 capacities and with the rest of Curriculum for Excellence. So we're emphasising to everybody that we've captured everything in there, so they don't need to worry about doing all of that as well. We're trying to think of ways to do that streamlining, as I mentioned. And in the next section, as Jane said, we carefully combed through all of those words in the Wordle to pick out the skills which were most obvious in the Wordle. And you'll see creativity, critical thinking, problem solving are all built into that as well. And we really enjoyed working with a graphic designer on this. So we had our own very basic Word version of this poster, which we lovingly called our masterpiece. But it was wonderful to work with a real creative graphic designer to get her input into creating the poster itself. So I think, is this where I hand over to you now, Jane, to speak about the bundles?
Yep. So the middle section of the poster has the word cloud right at the centre of that, so that hopefully people can actually see where the words have been drawn from. And this is the first time that they actually see each of the 5 bundles. And they I mean, this could be done in so many different ways, but I think what Yvonne and I tried to think about was, well, what experiences do we really think that our young people need in order to be fully encompassing everything that LFS is all about? So we're taking things about, well, they should actually take part in activism, they should get out and they should do something, whether it's political activism or taking action in the local community to clear it up or whatever. They should actually be getting out and exploring their local environment. They should start local and then they should be gradually expanding their horizons. They should be thinking about sustainability. They should be thinking globally. They should really be getting in there and sort of looking at values and attitudes. So it was actually about what kind of stuff do we want our young people to be involved in? And then we just came up with the headings and the words gradually fell into all of those different bundles. So just looking at each of the bundles, we're just going to whiz through the next 3 or 4 slides because we're going to look at these on our Jamboards. So bundle 1, as we've kind of said, pretty self-explanatory. Bundle 2 in a wee bit more detail is getting kind of more into the kind of global citizenship, international stuff. Bundle 3 is all about that kind of local connection, about culture and heritage, getting out into your local environment and exploring what's there on your doorstep, making connections there with your community and linking there to economy. Bundle 4, kind of the one maybe a wee bit more kind of about thinking about all the stuff that maybe schools find really difficult to tackle, some of the just really getting into attitudes and values. And bundle 5, that one that we've talked quite a lot about just getting out there and being active and taking action on the things that actually matter to you. And a lot of people have said that, actually, is that the right way to do it? Is the right way to kind of be, streamlining people into bundles? But actually the bundles are so loose that what we're hoping is that people will deliver what's relevant to their school community within each of those loose bundles, and it gives them that structure and that freedom to be able to plan and to do what suits, as I say, their learners and their community, but within that framework. Okay, the very bottom of the poster just talks about the planning and the pedagogy, again those words that didn't fit into the skills or into the kind of overarching stuff, and just brings in all of those words that are about kind of engaging in active teaching approaches, outdoor learning and play, and for the need for that learning to be really purposeful and to meet those curricular requirements.
And this is where I come back in with my curriculum messages, I think, Jane, isn't it?
Yep.
So how does this link with policies such as Higgios 4? We're obviously, our creativity and our creative leadership has really been focused on thinking about 2.2, so quality indicator 2.2, and how good is our school 4. And we've included this curriculum level 5 illustration there, really just to capture how the rationale and design of a school's curriculum is supposed to be a collaborative thing based on the kind of values and vision which, as I said earlier, are central to learning for sustainability. So placing values at the centre of the curriculum, encouraging that community focus and that integration of the community in the actual learning processes themselves. As well as that, obviously, there's the children's rights element. So we've got our UNCRC is now ratified and in Scottish law. And Jane and I are working with colleagues across the authority to look at how we can build that element of LFS into the systems and processes that cut not only across our service, but also beyond into the other services in our council and our partners and third sector colleagues. So we're really trying to think of LFS in a holistic way so that we can work with colleagues in our service and beyond, as I've said, to really build those learners' entitlements into both our LFS framework, but also to influence the rest of the curriculum. So, as Jane's just described, we're intending to support our schools in doing this by creating these starter bundles and having groups of E's and O's which schools and settings can use as a starting point to try and build a framework which really does help everyone both understand what the entitlements for LFS are, but also build them into the 4 contexts. And as part of Jane and I's journey, we're thinking big. We're trying to work out how we can do a visual version of this. How could it look if it was from 3 to 18? And I'm sorry about the quality of this slide. It's a wee bit fuzzy, but I borrowed the image from the OECD report, and you see the link in the slide to that as well. And we just wanted to include this in the description of our journey, obviously to acknowledge the influence of COVID on everything that we've done and the changes to classroom practices, the move to remote learning and blended learning, and also the consultation that's been done with children and young people during that process to find out how they feel about what their education systems across the world need. So we've borrowed the compass from the Future of Education and Skills document, but tried to home in on that co-agency with peers, teachers, parents and communities. So that idea of the co-construction, the sort of creative shaping of the curriculum through creative leadership, but also creative learning at a system level and in schools. And also to place that student agency, so that idea that the pupil's voice should be really loud in the shaping of that curriculum as well. So we felt it was important both to point to sort of international developments in response to COVID, and just to reference really how we're trying to creatively build those into the framework that we're creating with colleagues in Falkirk. And the task that we'd love you to take part in today, we're aware that we've done quite a lot of front-loading chat here, but we're really interested in giving you as much time now to engage with those bundles in a bit more detail. And you've possibly used the Jamboard collaborative online tool before. I absolutely adore it. And it's been a really useful tool during all sorts of sessions just now. So the actual task that we've got is we're hoping that you'll be able to scroll up to or scroll down to Jane's link to the Jamboard in the chat box. Now, depending on the device that you're on, you may be able to open another window and use that link in the other window, and it will take you to the Jamboard. Now, just in case there is anyone who's not used Jamboard before, it's basically a big whiteboard, an interactive whiteboard with tools down the left-hand side. And if you scroll down the tools at the left-hand side, you'll be able to see a wee post-it note. And if you click once on that, then a blank post-it note will appear in the middle of your slide, and you will be able to type on that. Now, when you type on it and you've finished typing on it, it will appear at the top left-hand side of the white Jamboard. And I think, Jane, you've already put some in there to get people started off, haven't you?
Yep.
So once you've added your post-it to that wee pile, just feel free to drag it to where you want it to be. Now, we're hoping that you'll stick with the yellow post-its to just, I suppose, brainstorm what you would make that bundle look like. So what Jane's done in the middle of each Jamboard page is she's put one of our 5 bundles with the brief extract of the words from the Wordle. So what would you do with that bundle? What would it look like for the learners that you're working with? So that's your yellow post-it task. But we thought we could almost double dividend on this task and do a bit of metacognition for ourselves as well, and ask you to use a different colour to think with your teacher or leader hat on and comment on the bundle itself. So thinking about it from an educator's point of view, what does that bundle make you think about the way that you might work? Or what does it make you think of as a purpose? Because what we've said is that we're trying to create these bundles as broad curriculum purposes, starting points to help our schools and establishments structure their curriculum. So with that in mind, do you have any comments to make on the bundles? Now, what we've done, or what Jane's done rather, is she's made a bundle page. So there's 5 pages in our Jamboard, and please feel free to move between the pages to the bundle that you're maybe most interested in. And feel free to add to as many or as few as you want to. You might want to focus in on one and go really deeply into the ways that you might use that with learners, or you might have lots to say about another bundle. So please feel free to do this task in the way that feels most relevant to you. And I should have said to everyone, I'm sure you know, I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted, but it's totally anonymous, Jamboard. So you're just named after an anonymous animal. So we've got anonymous badgers and bisons, etc. And the only two things to watch out for are not to delete your post-it notes, but to, if you hover over your post-it note, you'll see that 3 little dots appear as an ellipsis at the top right-hand corner, and you can use the ellipsis to edit your post-it note. So that's how you edit. And the only other thing not to do is not to clear the frame at the top of the screen either. So as long as nobody does any deleting or clearing of frames, we'll be able to share the Jamboard link with you, and also to save a PDF version, if that would be of use to anybody too, and have that sent to you. So I'm just going to let things go quiet for a minute and leave you all with space to think. And if you're okay, what I'll do is I'll leave the Jamboard page 1 visible for a wee while, and then after a few minutes, I'll have a look at the other pages, and I'll just move between the pages, and we'll do that for maybe 5-10 minutes. And when it looks like the activity is starting to slow up a wee bit, we'll then have a wee discussion about what we're seeing in the post-its. So I'm going to mute myself just for a wee while just now and give everybody space to think.
Feel free to post. We've got lots of content coming up on the Jamboards. Feel free to post any comments just about the bundles in general. They can be on blue or any other colour of post-it you fancy using. So if we keep yellow for content and use any other colours, any additional comments just on the actual bundles themselves, whether you think we've grouped the right things together or whether you think they would be useful, or there's certainly lots of overlaps between each of the bundles, and that's kind of how they're designed to be as well, rather than just self-contained.
It's always fascinating for me to watch all the post-it notes appear on the Jamboard like magic. You can tell I'm not a digital native. And the comments that people are leaving are fascinating too. I don't know if anybody wants to open up their mic or raise their hand and speak about any of the coloured post-its that you've started to put on page 1, for example. We've got some great suggestions there for love food, hate waste, working with the local authority waste team, linking in. Lots of links with partners being suggested there. And some of those national resources that we mentioned that were such a useful or essential part of our framework. Citizen science, school ambassador project. So let's look at the blue post-its there. So Jane, I think you put that one in about covering a wide range of topics and just the breadth and potential for that particular bundle. And then some of the sustainable practice issues can be challenging in non-social subject settings in a secondary school. Yes, I'm wondering if that's to do with the challenges of building interdisciplinary learning across departments and faculties as well. Is that an issue that relates to the comment in that blue post-it note there? Do feel free just to open up your mic if you want to speak about that. There's no pressure to do it though.
Yeah, it was me who put that comment, and I think it was just more thinking about, like I said, the constraints of curricular content. Mm-hmm. There's a lot, that is expected to be covered across secondary curricula from BGE and in the senior phase. And obviously, like you said, interdisciplinary learning would be a great way to bring in some of those themes to, like, music is my specialist subject, so that's how I could include those themes in my class. Mm. But outside of those kind of ideal projects, those themes aren't the easiest ones from learning for sustainability to, like, embed in my own practice. Mm-hmm.
I can see that would be a challenge, Sarah. And I suppose it's from your classroom. I'm sorry, Sarah, I'm not sure. Are you a classroom practitioner? YMI officer, I think.
Yes, I'm a YMI officer at Creative Scotland, but I just came from a classroom teaching post. So yes, recently absconded to Creative Scotland.
Yeah, I suppose I was wondering and thinking how this bundle could be used, and I know it's very challenging in a secondary school context to influence more than one department or faculty at a time. And maybe this is an example where the creative leadership is required to support the sort of classroom practitioners in working out how all of these bundles can be fitted into the bigger, broader strategic curriculum of an establishment. And I think Jane and I are kind of negotiating that whole challenge area, I suppose. And that's why we've taken opportunities to work both with classroom practitioners and with senior leaders in schools as well, because I suppose we're aware of some of the challenges of that. So thank you for picking up on that.
I think also from my own experience, like, it's okay to acknowledge that all of these bundles can't be covered by every teacher. And like you said, I think it's having that overview and having a whole establishment approach to learning for sustainability that is going to get success.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's one of the things when we're kind of rolling the framework out, is we're making it clear that you can't possibly cover all of the bundles, even at every level, and that's why a whole school approach to this needs to be adopted, so that as a person goes through that kind of 3 to 18 journey, they are experiencing everything that LFS encompasses, but it needs to be done in a kind of planned and structured way. But you can't possibly, let's say for a primary teacher, you couldn't possibly cover all of these bundles within a session. But over the primary school life of a child, you would hope that every one of these bundles or every bit of that kind of LFS word cloud would be covered at some point, and the bundles give you the structure to do that within. It's a bit like out in the secondary, it's a little bit like outdoor learning. It's much more challenging for us to be able to show secondary teachers how this would work in a secondary context. But I think what it does do is it opens up conversations with secondary colleagues about, certainly in the broad general education, how they could kind of work much more collaboratively and maybe create their own forms of the bundles, you know, which departments and which experiences kind of lend themselves to their school. And, you know, the bundles are not prescriptive. They can be taken apart and restructured, although Yvonne and I's hope is that we'll be able to get a much more kind of progressive and cohesive plan working across Falkirk if people are kind of working within the bundles. Yvonne, I'm just aware of time, and I'd really like to have some time kind of at the end for people to get involved in a wee bit more discussion. So the link to the Jamboard is obviously still there, and people can keep revisiting that and adding things onto it, but I think it's probably worthwhile just to try to get to the end of the presentation and open that up, Yvonne, to further discussion.
Yep.
So thank you folks for getting involved in that process, and apologies for the Jamboard not working well. We're kind of, me in particular, have challenges with technology all of the time. No matter how many presentations we do, I've always got a glitch every single session. So hopefully you've seen that creativity has really been the key to what Yvonne and I have done and the framework that we've created. So we've had to use our imagination, we've had to solve the problem of kind of making that word cloud tangible in some way. We've definitely had to be open-minded, and we're really curious about how folk are going to start using our starter plans and the framework in general. And it is going to be a kind of really interesting process to see where we go from here. And our last slide just really shows that we're really at the start of our journey, and we're not really sure where it's going to lead us. We do know what our next steps are going to be, but as Yvonne kind of touched on right at the start, I've always had this idea that it would be great to, in some way, sort of in a visual way, show what an outdoor learning journey in particular would be like for a wee person coming in at 3, and what that would encompass when we kick them back out the system at 18. What are all their entitlements? What, in terms of outdoor learning, should that journey actually look like? And that would encompass, you know, from sort of a 3-year-old being able to, you know, take part in active play and roll down hills and climb trees, so that kind of progression in terms of adventure. So, and then as they go through that adventure, going on to adventure activities and eventually leading on to residential experiences, and gradually widening their horizons geographically, as well as their adventure being progressive as well. And now that my outdoor learning work's really been encompassed into that wider LFS, I guess, picture, I'm now thinking, whoa, we need to make it a big Learn for Sustainability visual. You know, what does Learn for Sustainability really look like for a wee person coming in at 13, and what are all the different things that they should be able to get involved in? So it should be activism, and they should be getting adventure activities, and they should be getting residentials and things. So Yvonne and I have started some very early creative discussions about some kind of visual that we could be produced. And Yvonne goes out for a walk every morning, and she regularly says, oh, you'll never guess what came to me when I was on my walk this morning. So one of her walks this week, she came back and she said, Jane, when we go on our next bit of this journey for kind of launching our framework and things, I've been thinking that we could do with some kind of game or some kind of cards or something like that, maybe something like Monopoly, where we could then get practitioners involved in some kind of activity that would help them to structure their LFS curriculum. So we're constantly being creative, and our journey will continue in trying to make sure that LFS does become embedded for every young person coming to our Falkirk establishments. So it'd be really good to get your feedback on the framework in general, on our bundles. and just kind of some general thoughts. So we're going to open it up for discussion for the last kind of 10-15 minutes to get some feedback from you guys.
I think Mrs. Dunn in the chat box, Jane, has explained that West Lothian have been working on a progression in outdoor learning. Mrs. Dunn, if you're happy to tell us a wee bit about it, it would be great to hear a bit more.
Hi there, my name's Melissa, and I'm sure we've met before in some of the LFS meets.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi there. I'm a class teacher, but I also have a health and wellbeing development post, and part of that post looks at learning for sustainability. And this year there's been a particular focus just kind of coming back on outdoor learning or learning outdoors. So a couple of my colleagues, Nicola Connor and I, have been working with Mary Thompson and Fiona Shaw at Education Scotland, looking to make an outdoor learning framework type thing. It's not there is progression in that we've looked at Natural Wales's progression in nature and Nature Scotland's progression in place, just to kind of highlight the different places where you can take your learning outdoors. It's not always just the school grounds, that is an area, but thinking further afield. And also the progression in nature. How do a child at whatever point can kind of progress from enjoying their experiences outdoors, finding out more about nature and outdoors, to looking at taking activism, kind of linking in with the SDGs there. So we are, we've got something that's looking better than it did when it first started. It's kind of been reviewed a few times, but it is something that we could share with people, because I don't see the point in everybody working in silo. I think it's good if we can share our practice. So I'm meeting with them this Monday, but it does, we've got examples. So we've putting ideas across the 4 contexts of learning, and then we have taken curricular headers and taken some of the sub areas of the curriculum and put examples or ideas of how outdoor learning kind of can permeate across the whole curriculum there, and we've split that from early into 4th level. So that's something that we've been working on, and as I say, we will be sharing. And just picking up, I was just typing in the chat there about Yvonne. I think it was Yvonne was talking. It might have been your idea though, when you were out walking, thinking about cards. That would be a good idea. It was one of the conferences earlier on in the week, and it was Murray Council. Now it was to do with their skills, but they got in touch with a lady. Now her name will come back to me, and she makes card games. And it was a great idea. So they had taken their skills framework and turned it into a card game. And at that time, I thought, it'd be great if you could take LFS to get chats about that. It's an easy way to get people talking, an easy way to get people thinking about, what does that mean? What could I do? Where do I see myself? So I do have her details, and I'll post that in the chat if it'd be helpful. But it'd be worthwhile taking a wee look at that, because when I had saw that, I thought that's a great and easy way, and it'd be a great tool for people to use, because they had a kind of a hard copy, a copy you could use, but just in the times we're in, they also had a digital copy of it that pupils could use and get them really thinking. So thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. I had a wee scan through the programme again this morning, and I noticed that as well, and it's back to the same idea. I thought, I wonder if that's similar to what Jane and I had been discussing, so thank you. Patrick, you're going to come in as well? So, lovely. Hi.
So I'll just introduce myself to folk. Patrick Boxall. Though I spent most of my life as a secondary teacher, I'm currently at Queen Margaret University lecturing in initial teacher education, and my research areas are creativity, outdoor learning, and learning for sustainability, and those are my teaching areas too. And I just wanted to come in and say, this is pure brilliant, by the way, and I would love to use it with our students. We're actually closing the course in learning for sustainability right now, and I'd love to feed this in, because what this is doing, I think, is really making meaningful how learning sustainability synchronizes with curriculum for excellence. The other thing I think you're doing here is placing it within the social justice agenda that I think is so often missed, because we get so caught up in, outcomes and, accountability and attainment, all of which are very reasonable things, but we can so easily lose what we really should be about in terms of social justice. And I think this is raising all sorts of really interesting debates around how we continue to think about our professional values in the reality of the world with all those pressures that we exist in as educators. So yeah, I think it's great, and I really like the way you're placing it in broader agendas, and that's where I'd like to see this going, particularly in your last one about activism. That I think opens up some really interesting discussions that we should be talking about that are going on, by the way, in other areas, like decolonizing the curriculum is a massive theme at university just now. I'm not quite sure how far that's touched mainstream education at the moment. So, yeah, but great stuff.
Thanks, Patrick. And that the theme of decolonisation of the curriculum, it is beginning to touch our curriculum through some of the newly trained probationer teachers. One of my other hats is practitioner inquiry, and 2 of our secondary probationer teachers presented inquiries just last session on exactly that subject. And that was the first time that I had been made aware of it in our sort of school context. It was fascinating. And thank you for your feedback. Jane and I actually worked with some students at the University of Stirling last week to share the framework with those. So it'd be good to have further discussions.
Yeah, no, it'd be great. I'll fire Jane an email and pick it up. It'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Sarah's posted a question in the chat. I am saying if we could share how we're kind of sharing the framework with schools and school leaders. So we've got a series of CLPL sessions. We've run 2 so far. We've got some that are aimed at people at the start of their LFS journey, so practitioners, and we've got others that are aimed at managers, people who are having or got responsibility for embedding LFS across the school. So we'll keep on running those. We've got a Learning for Sustainability network in the authority where we're asking people to start working with the bundles, and we're, I guess, trialling kind of some of those things. We've got an idea to start, I guess, trialling what that whole school approach could look like within a cluster, so that we've got that progression from 3 to 18 as well. We ran a session prior to the framework being launched with all of our managers, just reinforcing their responsibilities in terms of LFS and making them aware that the framework was about to be published. So we did get a slot at the head teachers meeting. The sessions are not HUFTAs at the moment, but we're hoping that gradually we'll start to track which managers have attended our voluntary CLPL sessions, and then hopefully start signposting the forthcoming sessions to people that haven't already come along. And we've got a session as well across the RIC that will be happening, is that in May or April, Yvonne? I can't remember.
End of April, yeah.
So we're spreading this across our regional improvement collaborative as well.
Yeah, and I'm responsible for doing an input on interdisciplinary learning with all of our probationer teachers. So I used the framework as the interdisciplinary context to try and support or to demonstrate to them how they could plan in an interdisciplinary way, address a cross-cutting theme, and build in all of those 4 contexts of the curriculum all at the same time. I know that might sound a wee bit complicated, but I figured that would enable the probationer teachers to get a much better understanding of what their LFS responsibilities were, and B, it would demonstrate kind of what you were mentioning, Patrick, just how interdisciplinary LFS is, and how it doesn't matter what subject area you're in a secondary context, there will always be elements of those bundles that will be relevant to your subject. Yes.
I'm quite interested for those of you who are maybe kind of, I know there's a couple of head teachers and things in our session today. I'm just wondering if anybody would like to comment on how useful you think this would be as a member of a senior management team in terms of being able to embed LFS across your schools. So Natalie White, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just wondered if you thought this would be any use to you in your new post. No, she's typing in the chat box. Her mic isn't working, so hopefully we'll get some feedback from Natalie there. So I don't know if there's anybody else who's a senior leader in the school and could comment on how useful this might be to them.
I think Barbara's commented that when she was in her role as a head teacher, she would have found it very useful.
Thank you for that feedback, Barbara. Just building on your comments, Sarah, we've also shared obviously our framework with our curriculum support team with wider colleagues. So what we're trying to encourage them to do is that in any engagement with schools in whatever capacity, so whether it's our team managers going in to support them in quality assurance, or whether it's our RAISE officers going in to support schools with STEM, that we are asking them to consider that in that wider LFS context. So to say to, whatever you're doing, whether it's a STEM initiative, you could consider it in that wider context and see which of the bundles fits in best with whatever you're trying to do. So we're trying to, I guess, tackle it from all different angles and raise learning for sustainability right up to the top of the agenda and all of the work that the curriculum support officers are doing.
Yeah. I'm again scanning through, being able to point teachers at resources and lessons. Yeah, I think we're recognising, Natalie, that we've still got a way to go to coordinate everything. I think because of the complexity of the task, as Jane's described, we're trying to link up with other officers in our central team to take away the complexity. So linking the STEM to the outdoor learning to the LFS, describing LFS as an umbrella term and trying to make it explicit all of the bits that fit within that. So we're hoping that we're still close to the start of our journey, but we're really trying to develop that LFS umbrella and to raise awareness of everything that fits under it. So thank you everybody for your comments in the chat box. I know that this is a lunchtime session, so a lot of you will need to pop off now. Thank you so much for your contributions. Feel free to leave at any point from now on that you're ready to leave, obviously. Jane and I will hover on here just in case there are any last minute questions, and the session will close in 1 minute at 1 o'clock sharp. But as I say, we're happy to stay on in case anybody's got any questions, but thank you so much.